Common Sense Army, it is Wednesday, and on today's episode of the Why I'm Right podcast, we're breaking down how yesterday was a great day for Donald Trump in court and out of court, a great day for Republicans across this country, and it's time for Americans to come together. When we see what's going on and we continue to harm ourselves, and we continue to harm our nation, and we continue to harm our justice system in this nation, we make ourselves look weak around the globe, and we start to deteriorate what this nation has always been. And so it's time to listen up, because this is the Why I'm Right podcast.
We live in a world filled with noise and confusion, clickbait, and outright lies in the media. But here, we cut through the clutter to find the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. This is Why I'm Right, the podcast where we dig deeper, ask the tough questions, and unravel the tangled webs of political and current events. Join us as we dissect the latest news, analyze political rhetoric, and challenge the narratives that dominate the mainstream discourse. We're not shy. From dissecting the motives behind policy decisions to uncovering the hidden agendas of public figures, it's what we do. It's time to think for ourselves. This is Why I'm Right. And now your unafraid and unapologetic host, Matt Taylor.
He is right. This is the Why I'm Right podcast. If this is your first episode ever here on the Why I'm Right podcast, I'm happy you're here. Welcome to the Common Sense Army. And if you're already a member of the Common Sense Army, welcome back. Today's episode is massive. Before we dive into it, I say this on every episode. We're growing the Common Sense Army one day at a time, one podcast at a time. The one way you can help out in this mission is by clicking subscribe and sharing these videos with your friends, sharing these podcasts with your friends, your family, people who agree, people who disagree, because right now more than ever, we need the ability to have free speech and civil discourse in this nation. Our country is on the line right now, folks. It really is. And so the one way you could help, like I said, is continue to grow the Common Sense Army and continue to listen to this podcast every single day. Now, without further ado, let's dive into what yesterday was. If you've been living under a rock, you haven't checked the news, your phone hasn't buzzed. Yesterday was a massive day for Donald Trump and a massive day for the Republican Party, because three things happened, the trifecta. One, Stormy Daniels took the stand in the hush money trial in New York City and fell apart completely, melted down completely. Two, the appeal on Fani Willis in the Georgia case. Obviously, we all know Fani Willis screwing the prosecutor on the case, her boyfriend. And we saw what went on, obviously using taxpayer dollars, people from Georgia's money to wine and dine her boyfriend and bring them on expensive vacations. Well, that case just got kicked up to the Georgia Appeals Court. And three, the Presidential Records Act and the document case going on in Florida with Jack Smith. That case completely fell apart. That case, Judge Cannon announced yesterday, the judge on the case, that case is being postponed indefinitely, and it looks like that case will be postponed post-election. These are massive things for Donald Trump right now. Three things he doesn't have to worry about right now. So before we dive into the Stormy Daniels case, I know I talked about it yesterday on the podcast, but before I dive into what happened yesterday with that trial, let's quickly touch on the other two. We all know, I mentioned it a few seconds ago, Fani Willis was screwing the prosecutor on the case, dating the prosecutor on the case, used taxpayer dollars to wine and dine her boyfriend. And finally, after multiple appeals, it's now being pushed to the Georgia Appellate Court, and it looks like they might be taking Fani Willis off the case. Obviously, the Florida case, I mentioned it with Jack Smith in Florida, has completely fallen apart. 100% that case is screwed right now, and the judge on the case, like I just mentioned, postponed it indefinitely. These are big, big deals right now, folks. This means the only focus of Donald Trump right now is on winning the election and getting out of this case in New York City. The only real case going on is with Alvin Bragg right now, the hush money trial, a case where he wouldn't charge Trump before Trump ran for president again. The previous prosecutor in New York City wouldn't charge Trump. The AG in New York City wouldn't charge Trump. And even the FEC, who supposedly this is an FEC violation case where something should have been accounted for as a campaign finance charge, the FEC itself said no crimes were committed and wouldn't charge Donald Trump there. So the only hurdle for Donald Trump right now, it looks like the only hurdle for Donald Trump, unless the liberal agenda right now is charge. The only thing Donald Trump has to worry about is this case in New York City. And I mentioned Stormy Daniels took the stand yesterday, and it was a nightmare if you're the prosecutor. She described salacious details of sexual content and Donald Trump's and his boxers. And the judge even came out yesterday, Judge Mershon, and said he was surprised that the defense didn't object to much of the testimony after the defense tried to squash the testimony about this sexual and salacious acts by a porn star, Stormy Daniels. But I don't know if anyone expected it to go as poorly as it did. Even CNN was out today and yesterday talking about how bad of a day it was yesterday. I'm going to play a clip here from CNN talking about how bad Stormy Daniels was yesterday on the stand. Here's clip one.
Casey?
Just one thing that I've been sort of noticing as this has gone on is that there have been a couple times where she seems to be cracking a joke, trying to get a reaction from the jury, and our reporters in the room have noted that the jury hasn't seemed to respond to that.
No, they're taking their job seriously.
I mean, what do you make of that?
Humor is risky in the courtroom, especially if you go in with lines, like it looks like Stormy. If something happens spontaneously, if an easel falls over, people will laugh. They're human. But it's never going to work if you go in there like, I'm going to amuse the jury. I'm going to sort of say this clever thing.
You know, again, this is on CNN yesterday. This case should have been tossed for mistrial about 2 weeks ago. This case has been a disaster in New York City. And at the end of the day, you heard it there on that clip. Perception is reality. And so when Stormy Daniels takes the stand and starts describing salacious sexual details that really have nothing to do with the crime that they're saying Donald Trump committed. Everyone knows that Trump had an affair with Stormy Daniels. No one's even arguing about that. Everyone knows Donald Trump paid Stormy Daniels to sign an NDA. So really the details of the sexual actions have nothing to do with it. The only reason the judge wanted to allow and wouldn't let the defense squash the testimony was because he's trying to embarrass Donald Trump again in the media, embarrass Donald Trump to impact the election. And I say this over and over because the judge came out yesterday and said, I can't believe the defense didn't object to many of the statements that were being said by Stormy Daniels, but the defense did try to squash the entire testimony about anything sexual in nature. And again, it backfired. The jury didn't respond well to all of this. Stormy Daniels trying to crack jokes on the stand, talk about sex on the stand. This just shows you how much of a sham this trial really is. Perception is reality. And when your star witness, Stormy Daniels, is anything but a star, the only star she is a porn star, the reality is the case starts to fall apart epically. And so yesterday, again, it's important to note, the judge on this case was a Biden donor, a Biden-Harris donor in the previous election and has donated a lot of money to the Democrat Party over the last 30 years. Even with how poor yesterday went, what happened? The mayor in New York City, Mayor Eric Adams, came out yesterday and said Rikers Island is prepared for Donald Trump if he's convicted. Again, these people are clueless. Do you know what would happen to Donald Trump? The whole reason they're doing this trial, I just mentioned it. Alvin Bragg brought this case at the direction of the Biden Justice Department in this nation right now. That's a truth. It is. Alvin Bragg himself wouldn't charge. The FEC wouldn't charge this exact case. The FEC wouldn't charge. And the previous DA in New York wouldn't charge either. It wasn't until Trump announced, I'm running for president again to be the 47th president of the United States. Right? They all say Trump 45, Trump 47. Well, when Trump announced he's running, that's when this case was brought. By a donor judge, by a prosecutor, a DA, a district attorney that clearly has political motivations behind this case. And so, yes, the judge allowed Stormy Daniels to go through salacious details about Donald Trump's sex life and talk about his boxers and talk about stuff that has nothing to do with this case because, again, this trial's only purpose is to embarrass Donald Trump and affect public perception of Donald Trump to interfere with this upcoming election. But as I mentioned, and you heard it on that first clip, I have multiple clips today we're going to dive through. Even CNN is noting how poorly it went yesterday. They just said Stormy Daniels, the star witness, did not play well with the jury. And here's another clip here, CNN once again. And I keep saying CNN because it's important to note it's so objectively bad that even CNN, who wants nothing more than to demonize Donald Trump on a daily basis, even they are seeing how much yesterday sucked if you're the prosecutor. So here's CNN clip 2. Listen to this.
Because Nicholas confirms you call him names all the time. And Daniel starts to sort of yell, saying yes, because he made fun of me first. I mean, this is devolving pretty quickly, right? This is pretty toddler-esque conduct and lack of accountability. But what the defense is very effectively getting at is Daniel's disdain for the defendant. So this so far has been a very effective and dramatic cross and appears to continuing to become even more dramatic.
So the defense did a good job of showing the disdain for Donald Trump from Stormy Daniels. And in cross, you just heard it there on CNN, in cross, the defense did an unbelievable job of painting the picture of what this case really is. It was a great day for the defense. And even Stormy Daniels, when she wasn't talking about salacious details of sex, even when she wasn't talking about that, it didn't go well for her either. She testified yesterday that she wasn't in it for the money, that the only reason she wanted to tell her story is because she wanted the American people to know who Donald Trump was, someone who I guess had an affair with her. But even that statement in itself, she wasn't in it for the money. Well, if she wasn't in it for the money, then why just sign the NDA when money was offered? If your whole purpose was, I want to tell my story to the American people so people know who Donald Trump is, and I don't care about money, if that's true, let's run with it for a second. Then why just sign the NDA? Why didn't you tell the American people? Oh, wait, because he got paid. So Stormy Daniels and the abomination going on in the sham trial in New York City, which right now looks like the Democrats' only hope at putting Donald Trump in prison. And I just mentioned it. Eric Adams came out yesterday. Rikers Island's ready. Do they know what would happen if Donald Trump goes to jail? I said it on the podcast yesterday. I say it over and over. It would be the best thing for Donald Trump. It would humanize Donald Trump. They'd get a picture of Donald Trump in, you saw what he did in Georgia when they took the mugshot. He sold T-shirts. He posted on X. And he made money, campaign money, and changed the narrative of the entire day of arraigning Donald Trump. Do you know what he would do if they had a picture of Donald Trump behind bars? And you can't forget, Trump's not going in alone. He has Secret Service protection right now. So Trump's going to go into Rikers Island, right? And he's going to have Secret Service. I'm telling you right now, they'd get a picture of Donald Trump in jail, And that picture would become the most famous picture in the history of the United States, and it would make Donald Trump into Nelson Mandela. It would make Donald Trump into a martyr. And the election would be over. You could take that one to the bank. If they put Donald Trump in jail, Donald Trump will become the next president 100%. We've seen equal and opposite reaction for every one of these sham trials, sham charges. And that would be the biggest and the most blunt in your face. Especially when we see what's gone on. Especially when we see, like I mentioned, the FEC wouldn't charge. Bragg wouldn't charge. Previous DA wouldn't charge. Wasn't until Trump said, I'm running for president again, till these charges were brought. And just think about what this is doing to the reputation of the United States. The U.S. has always been known as a strong nation, the leader of the free world. Well, when we have a damn president on trial right now, and we're listening to the words of a porn star talking about boxer briefs, or whatever the hell she's talking about, how weak do we look across the globe? What do you think Putin is saying? What do you think Xi is saying in China? What do you think Kim Jong-un is saying? They're laughing at the U.S. right now. They're laughing at us in the United States of America. And something not many people are talking about, no one's really talking about it right now, is forget the foreign, the way this looks foreign out of the U.S. Investors in the U.S., people that actually invest into our economy, people that actually impact the stock market. How do you think this looks to investors that are looking to invest in the United States of America right now? I'm going to play a clip here from Kevin Hassett, and he talks about it in detail. You got to listen to this. This again, it's not just about how bad we look on a foreign stage right now. It's how bad we look to investors in the U.S., which could have backlash on our economy. This trial is doing more than you guys think. I'm telling you right now. There is a ripple effect going on in this nation, a ripple effect that's going on around the world right now, and it starts with bull like this. It starts with us deteriorating ourselves. The empire is ruining itself. We're cannibalizing our own. And the U.S., which was always based in principle, the Constitution, rights, we're in a part right now that I don't think we've ever been. We're attacking political opponents, weaponizing the DOJ, in charges that don't even make sense to charge. If Trump went out and murdered somebody, that's a different story. Again, this is an accounting error potentially, which many people, many experts in the legal field don't agree with. So much so, the FEC, which this is an FEC violation, they said this wasn't a crime. We do not want to charge this crime. Listen to this clip here. This is clip number 3. And like I said, it's Kevin Hassett talking about the impact of this trial and trials across the country right now on our own economy.
The macro story has been slowing quite considerably. You had 4.9% growth in the third quarter of last year. Now we're down to 1.6% in the first quarter. Do you expect it to continue to decline?
No, I think it'll stay about where it is right now. But the big risk, the outlook for me is something I've never seen before. That I really think if you look at the case in New York, that the judge is being so, undemocratic, unconstitutional in his rulings against President Trump. It really looks like there's a conspiracy to put him in jail, to put him behind bars. And if President Trump is in chains going to Rikers Island, then would you want to buy a U.S. Treasury the next day? The thing that I'm really worried about short-term risks for the economy is that the Democrats are serious in this lawfare, and if they actually succeed, then imagine it's like we become a banana republic the moment they take them to Rikers, and I just can't imagine what happens to Treasury markets that day.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Wow is right. And people right now think that the interest rates are bad or they're high right now. Historically in this nation, interest rates aren't terrible. When you look at our country's history and the history of interest rates But the reason they're relatively low, even historically speaking in this country, right now, they seem high today because what they were 2 or 3 years ago. But the reason they're low right now, historically looking at the United States, is because people are always buying houses, buying cars. And people continue to buy. But when they can't believe in the nation itself, and he just talked about it again, this is an economist talking about how these trials impact the economy because investors aren't going to feel comfortable buying bonds and doing things in this country that drive the economy. Because if you are living in a banana republic, the reason people invest in the United States is because we're seen as stable. We're seen as not being a third world country, a banana republic. We're known as this, this rock, this foundation. But we are anything but it right now. We're in chaos in the U.S. today. There is so much that's being affected beyond just our justice system right now, that's being affected by this politicization of the DOJ and politicizing our criminal justice system. Our country looks weak on a foreign stage. Our economy looks weak. Our president is weak. We're in crazy amounts of debt, and we're adding to the debt every single day. Americans right now have more credit card debt than any point in the history of the world. But even with how weak we look and how unstable we are today, this case in New York City is even weaker, even less stable. And I laid forth to you today the other two cases, the big cases that everyone thought this is going to be it. This is the moment. You saw Rachel Maddow and all the people on MSNBC, CNN getting together, getting ready to put Trump behind bars. They're falling apart too. Because the American people, the American way, and the American system still can work in this country. It still can. Even with a judge in New York City who donated money to the Biden-Harris campaign, who's going after, again, and representing the Biden administration in this trial right now, allowing things to go on, allowing salacious details of sexual acts to be talked about in the courtroom. You look at our country right now, and the only people that can damage us today is ourselves. China, we don't have to worry about China right now because they're sitting back watching what we're doing to our own people, watching what we're doing to the president, watching what we're doing to our economy, watching us continue to add debt. Putin doesn't need to attack us today. Why? Because we're wasting all of our money in Ukraine. He's watching LGBTQ and laughing at us and saying, look how weak these people are in the U.S. Even our own allies right now can't even believe in us. Allies like Israel, our number one ally, historically speaking, America has always stood with Israel. They can't rely on us today because Biden has to rally up his base of kill the Jews, down with Israel, down with the U.S. Think about where our country has gone in the last 4 years. The only people that could damage us today is ourselves. We need the American spirit back in this country. We need the people in this country to realize what we have today and the risks of what we can lose tomorrow. We need a populace in this country who loves this country, not yells death to America. We need a populace in this country who supports our allies. America can still be the superpower we've been known as. America can still be the currency of the world. But every day we focus on some bull trial in New York City where a porn star is sitting there talking about sex on the stand, cracking jokes to the jury. we get further and further away from the America we once were. And I believe America needs to be saved. America needs a strong leader today. It's the only way we can get from where we are to where we're going. And so now more than ever, I think Trump's slogan, "Make America Great Again," is so important. Because people who have been through stuff, I'm not talking about my generation, and I'm not talking about generations below me. People who have fought in wars, people who have lost loved ones in wars, lost their grandfather, their father, and knows what this nation has been, what we were founded on, who understood American history, who love this country and realize that this experiment, though it's not perfect, we always can strive to become better. But it starts with a foundation in our rights that are God-given, not given by the government. And until we get back to that belief in this country, the belief in ourselves, we're heading down a road that I don't know where it leads. And 4 more years with this guy in office, 4 more years with a weak leader, 4 more years with someone who has no backbone, won't stand up for right and wrong, who won't support our allies. And I don't know where this country's heading. I don't. And so again, on this episode of the Why I'm Right podcast, it was a great day for Republicans yesterday, and it was a great day for Donald Trump. But I will say, there is a lot that's going to happen between now and November. I had a whole episode yesterday about I believe the only solution for the Democrats today, the only solution, they have no choice but to go radical. And that was before these cases fell apart yesterday. They were still holding on to hope that one of these cases was going to put Trump behind bars. And I really believe now more than ever, even now more than yesterday, the Democrats have no choice but to replace Joe Biden at the convention in Chicago, the Democratic convention. They have no choice. And I said it yesterday on the podcast. There's one thing we know about Democrats. They're willing to go push the line. They're willing to go as far as it takes to win. Whether that means spying on a campaign, impeaching someone twice, trying to charge them with insurrection, fabricating stories, investigating Russia. They're willing to do anything. And imagine if those people who are willing to do anything were willing to do anything for this country. And that's the spirit we need back in this country right now. Is people that will do anything to see the nation succeed. Not to hold on to power. And not to push a globalist agenda that leads into the demise of our own dollar, the demise of our economy, the demise of our people, the demise of our freedoms. It's a scary place right now in the United States because we're in limbo right now. We can go one of two ways right now. One leads to continuing American dominance, and one leads to American destruction. And it would be foolish to believe that America can't fail because at the end of the day, even the Roman Empire fell. And so we need Americans who love this country to stand up today for what we believe in. So we could build the foundation and build this country moving forward. And so, like I said, this is one episode this week. We got another few episodes coming out the remainder of the week. Make sure you guys stay tuned. I'm going to be staying tuned with this trial going on in New York City. Maybe we get a mistrial sooner or later here because, again, the case is falling apart for Alvin Bragg. The case is falling apart for the judge. And it's time. So, Americans, If you believe in this nation, you believe in this country, like I say again, make sure you guys continue to listen to this podcast. Share these videos with your friends, your family, people who agree and disagree. Let's continue to grow the Common Sense Army and continue down a road of American success. And I believe it starts with talking about it and not being afraid to ask why, not being afraid to ask what, and stand up for what's right. So this has been the Why I'm Right podcast, and I just told you why I'm right.
You've been listening to Why I'm Right. Thanks for being a part of the Common Sense Army. Our passion is to cut through the noise and confusion and to bring light to clickbait and outright lies in the media. Unafraid, unapologetic, real and raw. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on Instagram at Why I'm Right, on X at Why I'm Right Pod. And for more, hit the website at www.whyimrightpodcast.com. See you next time.